Hello everyone, welcome to the GeoEcologist. I am Dr. Krishnanand and you have been watching my videos on various topics related to geography on my channel, The GeoEcologist. If you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing this channel, and for the earlier videos, you can go to our playlist section and check and use those videos as per your convenience. Now, in today's session in political geography, we are going to learn something very interesting related to political geography of resource conflicts. And in the earlier lecture, we talked about water sharing disputes. In today's session, we are going to talk about forest rights and minerals related disputes in India. So before we go ahead, don't also forget to check our website, TheGeoecologist.com, for our paid courses. All the details are given there. And now let's go ahead and learn. So now let's understand this topic, political geography of resource conflicts, especially these conflicts related to forest rights and minerals out here. So you must have seen in newspapers or in magazines many times these kind of pictures being there. So वन अधिकार कानून लागू करो, गांव का संसाधन, वन अधिकार कानून लागू करो, all these kind of agitations and these hoardings in hand. So what do you understand of this? These placards and hoardings show us a resentment of people. They are not satisfied. They are agitating against something. So there is some kind of conflict involved between people and the state and maybe their alliances. So India has a long history of conflicts related to the forest rights and minerals as well, where critical resources for the country's economy and livelihoods are concerned. So understand, these are very important topics and very sensitive topics. So you should understand them in totality, and also do not look into only one perspective. There are multiple perspectives of analyzing these conflicts. So the political geography of these conflicts is shaped by certain parameters and certain factors. So distribution of these resources is one of them, and also the rights and claims of local communities is the second important aspect, and also the regulatory frameworks governing their extraction and usage. So if you're saying that you will be extracting a certain mineral resource from the land, so that land may belong to a certain community, certain cultures, so there will be always a conflict. So this is how we understand these kind of topics. So now, forest rights conflict in India are often rooted in historical injustices and power relations, power imbalances between the state and local communities, right? So what you observe, despite legal provisions for recognizing the rights of these forest dwelling people, what happens? Many of these communities continue to face eviction, displacement and exploitation. So despite having the legal norms for it, regulations for it, still there is a problem of eviction, problem of displacement, exploitation and others. So what we analyze in political geography, we look into these conflicts characterized by the distribution of forest resources, the socio-economic status of local communities and the regulatory mechanisms of forest governance in India. So what you observe here, for example, the conflict over the proposed diversion of a dense forest area in Western Ghats for a hydroelectric project in the state of Kerala highlights the tensions between environmental conservation on one hand and local livelihoods on the other hand. So now there is this kind of conflict. So what you can understand in a broad perspective, it's the development versus the sustainable development debate. So what kind of development do we want? It's ecology versus economy debate always in hand. So what would you do, right? So to understand this, we can also look into some other aspects like minerals, including coal, iron ore, bauxite, rare earth elements are critical resources for us, for India's development, industrial growth, right? And also for energy security, as we are looking into energy crisis, right? So their extraction and usage, when you see here, they always result in some kind of environmental and social impacts as well, for which we have also the EIA mechanism, right? And including displacement, pollution, conflicts over land rights. We have seen several such pictures from different areas of India where you have mineral belts, right? So what you observe here, the political geography of these conflicts is shaped by distribution, rights and claims of local community, regulatory frameworks and their extraction and usage, which is mostly confined to these mineral rich belts of India. So for example, conflicts in the state of Jharkhand or iron ore mining state of Odisha, have been commonly in news many times, and tensions between economic development and environment and social sustainability has been part of our news. So there we look into several topics like this. For example, Vedanta mines and what happened with the tribes out there in Odisha. So these were in the news. You can look into what happens to the land when there is a mining site out there. So environmentally, we have to also be sensitive while thinking of development, right? So look into this map of India's Maoist conflict. If you look into this particular map, the source here is Government of India, Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, why do you see these patches in this particular mineral belts only, right? So forest rights and mineral rights, whose rights are there? Right to land, right? And also these minerals are important for country's progress. So there is always a debate between this, right? So what would you do then? So a crackdown on Maoist rebels had led to rise in number of casualties in countries. Tribal areas, here are the regions which are mostly affected. So if you look into Jharkhand, Odisha, Telangana, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra areas, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, certain areas. So you look here, red is highly affected, this yellow mustard color is moderately affected, and this is marginally affected. And several times you have seen these pictures in the news, right? And these kind of agitations. So this is very common debate when we are talking about development. Right? So for whom do we want development? This development, if it is for local people or is it for outsiders? This is another debate, right? So what we look into is that this land conflict watch, look into this particular report. It says that common land disputes accounted for 74.94%, almost 75% of all land related conflicts that were going and were resolved. Landlocked is the title of this particular report, and you can look into that report. So Land Conflict Watch, LCW report, if you observe, right, this is an organization based in Delhi, and they are looking into this kind of conflicts in the country. Now look into this. One axis you have climate change, here you have economic development, and then you have environmental change and increased land scarcity, and this is leading to this livelihood insecurity, you can say crisis, and then what you see, the fragility and conflict risks out there. So then what you need to have is intermediary mechanisms, grievance redressal systems, and also look into some of these anti-state grievances, right? Many times people say that we want their, our own people, our own community-based state. So this kind of centrifugalization that we say is not good for the union concept. Remember, that's not good for national integration. So this kind of thing always is there. Now look into other aspects. So what do you find? According to this report, which was made public on December 12, 2022, 5th scheduled districts were responsible for about a quarter of all land-related conflicts. And if you observe the 5th schedule, names scheduled areas where scheduled tribes' interests must be safeguarded. So most of these areas where people are scheduled tribes in India are living, and their quality of life is very poor. That's also one of the important aspects of this debate, that whether this industrialization is going to help them overcome, or is it going to change their quality of life or not, right? So is it too exploitative in nature, or is it having a balance of development, right? So conflicts resulted from the absence of tenure and non-implementation of scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers, recognition of Forest Rights Acts 2006, FRA that we say, right? So this is very important in terms of what you say is the legal part of it, or you say the regularity thing. So what you observe here, some examples of specific cases of resource conflicts related to forest rights and minerals in India. So one of them is very famous, Niyamgiri Hills bauxite mining project in Odisha. And what do you find? The proposed bauxite mining project in the Niyamgiri Hills of Odisha by Vedanta Resources Limited, VRL, right, faced opposition from the Dogaria Kondh indigenous community. And remember, these indigenous community worship these mountains, these places, these forests, right? So who claim that project would destroy their sacred forests. Now this concept of sacred is very important, and there are many books written on the concept of sacred in India, right? So sacred is one point, and then their dependency and their livelihood also is there on the forests and land. So that was also a problem. So the conflict resulted in landmark Supreme Court ruling in 2013, which upheld the community's right to decide on the project's feasibility, right? So this is what we observe as one of the prime example. Now let's look into the other examples. So Singrauli coal mining and thermal power projects. Now Singrauli region is there in Madhya Pradesh and is a hub of coal mining and thermal power projects, and which have resulted in land acquisition, displacement and environmental degradation over decades. So what's there? There is also kind of conflict in Singrauli, which have involved protests by local communities, activists, civil society organizations who have demanded equitable compensation, rehabilitation and sustainability, right? So these are certain cases. Now let's look into one of the other aspects. Kalpakkam nuclear power plant, very famous, right? Another power plant in Tamil Nadu, faced opposition from local fishermen, right? Their community, who claimed that the project would affect their livelihoods and marine ecosystem at the same time. So what you observe, the conflict highlighted the tensions between nuclear energy development and environmental conservation at the same time, and resulted in formation of committee to address the concerns of these fisherfolk. So this is the third example. And one more example, if you observe, is this Saranda forest mining project. Now Saranda forest is in Jharkhand, which is rich source of iron ore, but its mining has resulted in conflicts over land rights, displacement, environmental degradation. All these problems are there wherever there is a mining area, right? And the conflicts in Saranda have involved protests by local communities, civil society organizations and several others. So if you observe, these are very common things, and there have been numerous these kind of case studies in India. You can look into it and you will find it on internet as well. So these are certain points to be made here. Now look into these particular images which are there. These images often keep coming in newspapers, often being around in articles, right? So you look into these people. Who are these people? They are people of India, and also they are poor at the same time. They do not have higher quality of life, right? So in aspiration of higher quality of life, they need a good livelihood framework, a good health condition. So all those conditions, if not met, it sounds very exploitative that only industrialists are being benefited. That's their logic. So we need to strike a balance between local community, between the industrialists, the state and local community, if you see this triangle properly. So what you observe here, these kind of images are very common. Now, the conflicts related to forest rights and minerals in India have significant impact on environment, society and economy. Look into this. Environmental degradation is very common. Deforestation, air pollution, water, soil, loss of biodiversity we have reported in certain areas. Displacement and resettlement issues are always there. Remember, resource conflicts often result in displacement of local communities, and displacement also leads to resettlement at some other place where there is a lot of problem related to society and economy, right? Also there is a loss of access to resources, cultural dislocation, and also loss of identity and social cohesion. Then socio-economic inequality, right? So who is getting the benefits of this resource extraction ultimately? So often if you observe the small elite, right? Recently there was a news that only few people control the resources of India, right? So few people, few rich houses in India have most of the resources or access to resources of our country, while rest of us are poor. So these kind of reports keep coming, and you can keep looking into our newspapers, into the articles that are being written, so you can look into certain more examples. So what you observe, the conflicts many times also leads to violent conflicts further, right? And these violences, clashes, protests against security forces, against the state machinery is very common in these areas, right? And legal and regulatory challenges are also there. So it's a problem for both, for local community, for people, as well as the state machinery. People are losing lives in these kind of conflicts as well, right? So what you observe, there is a way forward. There has to be a dialogue. There has to be a peace-based dialogue, right? Welfare-based dialogue, sustainable dialogue to address these resource conflicts, right? And one of the aspects is to recognize and respect the rights of local communities. The rights of local communities, including indigenous and forest-dwelling communities, must be respected, must be recognized, as you saw in the verdict of Supreme Court of India. And then foster inclusive and sustainable development. So resource development projects must be designed to foster inclusive. It should not be exclusive. Local people should be included in somewhat ways that could be devised, right? So that's very important. And then you have strengthening legal and regulatory frameworks. So regulatory frameworks should also be more transparent, and it should address to all the sections of the society. So this is very important. Then look into the promoting of dialogue and conflict resolution that I already told you. So dialogue has to be sustainable for both, for all the parties. So this is very important. The grievance redressal mechanism should include a good dialogue forum, mediation mediation, dispute resolution, addressing the root causes of conflict through collaborative approaches. And also remember, they should not be looked into only from a perspective of an industrialist or from the perspective of only the local. There has to be a midway, the middle path. The balance has to be attained if you want to develop, right? So promote alternative models of resource governance. It's very important. So resource governance is something which needs to be part of our mainframe decision making through Niti Aayog and its panels, its committees. This should be taken. That's what we can suggest, right? So in totality, what we understand through these case studies, through these examples across India, that there is this kind of conflict or tensions or agitation always mounting whenever there is a developmental project coming to some area, right? So what is the way out? What is the practical solution? Right now, what we do between economy and ecology, we check boxes and see how many boxes can we tick, and if you are having more benefits then there is problem, so then we go ahead for the decision. Because if you have to construct a highway and it is very important for the development of the region, then that highway will be constructed even if there is a problem of deforestation in the area. That's what we have seen. But then construction of a highway should include, or this inclusive framework of planting more trees along the highways, keeping it as green as possible, keeping green corridors as we have seen in the highway development in India. So this is what you say is inclusive way of looking into and resolving these kind of conflicts. And also we need to look into that what ways are being local communities compensated. There should not be exploitation, and there should be a mechanism to look into the socio-economic and socio-cultural cohesion in the communities wherever they are resettled, right? So in the next lecture, we'll also be looking into the resolution part of these kind of conflicts, the problems related to resettlements, compensation, and others. So now, when we have covered various aspects of the political geography of resource conflicts related to forest rights and minerals in India, in the sessions to come, we'll be talking more on other aspects of political geography, and we'll be trying to finish the topics. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and also please share these videos with others as well.